Less stress, more time, more money. Welcome to the Cash Flow Contractor, short with Martin Holland.
May you lead an interesting life. Hello, Cash Flow Contractors. This is Martin, and welcome to this short episode of the Cash Flow Contractor, in which I want to talk about the old Arab curse, may you lead an interesting life. Implied in that, it's a curse, not a blessing, was the idea that we would encounter a large number of surprises going forward. And the word surprise, it's in its origins, its etymology, is from the 14th century, was a military term, and it meant an unanticipated taking or attack. And from its very origins, that's what it meant, an unexpected taking. In that regard, it's not a very good thing to be surprised. I thought it's a worthy topic for a short episode because most of us are really good at what we do and what we know about and what we've learned to expect. But there are a lot of landmines out there, things that we don't know about that can surprise us and do real damage to our companies. I wanted to give you a few examples from clients and friends that I've encountered, and maybe you'll get the idea of what I'm talking about in trying to understand and prevent surprises. One of them had something to do with a lady. She was a client, is a client, and she contacted me about 2 years ago, and she said she had something she wanted me to see, and it was urgent. I had time that afternoon, so I said, come on over. And when she arrived at my office, she handed me a letter without saying a word. And the letter started out this way: Dear blank, the Workers' Compensation Commission Enforcement Unit has concluded its preliminary compliance review of the above referenced business and found it to be, in all bolds, non-compliant with the Administrative Workers' Compensation Act. That's never a good way to start a letter. Based on my calculations and the documents you provided, I am assessing a penalty for 1,134 days. The maximum penalty for noncompliance is $1,000 per day, which would be $1,134,000. Because you are in compliance at this time, I'm willing to offer you a reduced amount at 4%, which would be $45,360. And then the letter ends with these words: please return your payment in the enclosed envelope. Now, this kind, hard-working lady had taken the advice of an insurance guy who told her how to save money on workers' comp insurance. He was wrong. It cost him nothing, but it cost her $45,360, which she has indeed paid. Surprise! Another instance where a local business owner decided that his company qualified as a farming operation, and therefore he didn't have to pay overtime. Now, if you knew what this man did, you might even think, well, okay, maybe that is a farming operation. But a disgruntled employee in the Fair Labor Practice Board decided otherwise. This man took his own advice in looking to not have to pay overtime, and he was wrong. And it's cost him so far $21,000 in penalty and back pay. Surprise. Another business owner figured it'd be much easier to pay his team as 1099 contractors rather than employees. And there might be more than a few of you listening who do that. He could just, as 1099, keep his people who work for him treating him as 1099 contractors. All he'd have to do is just write checks to his people. Simple. No more payroll service, no more payroll deductions, no more payroll reports, no state and federal tax deposits. And as an extra bonus, he'd save the 9 or 10% FICA matching tax that he had to pay on payroll. He had asked around, and everybody, his words, in his line of work did it that way. He took everybody's advice, but everybody was wrong. He doesn't know the final tally, but he now knows that the penalties for misclassifying employees as contractors are $50 for each W-2 not filed, 1.5% of the total wages paid, 40% of the employee's FICA taxes. That means they would know their deduction, but you're going to have to pay it. 100% of the FICA tax match that he would have had to pay had they been employees, and a 0.5% penalty for the unpaid tax liability each month up to 25% of the total liability. His case is unresolved, but the penalties and taxes can easily surpass $100,000. Surprise! An acquaintance of mine formed a company to pursue a new business opportunity, and in order to save money, he downloaded an LLC operating agreement from an online site that promised to save him thousands of dollars in legal fees. We've talked about that in the past episodes. He's currently involved in a dispute with a partner about who was supposed to contribute how much money to the company. My acquaintance took the advice of a website. It was wrong, and the dispute has so far cost him about $15,000 in legal fees. Surprise! Another friend of mine owns a marketing company in Dallas, Texas, where through a series of convoluted rules, the state of Texas charges sales taxes on some services but not others. It's really hard to figure out the sales tax rules. My friend thought he had the rules figured out. An auditor at the Texas Comptroller's office thought differently, and it cost him $19,000 in taxes and penalties. Surprise, but the story doesn't end there. The auditor looked through people he had paid and began to branch out and contact all of them. And just from what I know through talking with my friend, those people are all out of compliance. So this has had some serious effects of his not understanding the correct rules for collecting taxes on services in Texas. This is a really interesting one. A subcontractor working for a large general contractor didn't understand the full meaning of the word inferred as it was used in his construction contract. It turns out that the word meant he was obliged to build not only what appeared on the architect's drawings, but also what the architect might reasonably have been thinking when he drew them. The subcontractor didn't fully appreciate that language, and he appreciates it now after doing $50,000 of unpaid work. Surprise. I can go on and on with examples of companies that were surprised by insurance, tax rules, HR, IT, banking issues, and so forth. But you get the point. You, again, are very likely to be good at what you do, but you're just as likely to not be an expert in all these critical areas, these landmines that can blow up your business. Misjudgments in the area result in real surprises. Some can just be annoying, some can be painful, and some can be catastrophic. Don't take the advice of everyone or a website or some guy, even if that guy is you. Surround yourself with the competent professionals that I've talked about in my advisor and mentors checklist. But at a minimum, CPA, attorney, insurance agency, banker, HR and IT professionals. Spend the money and use the experts. As an old Fram oil filter commercial says, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. And one last thing, coming up in the next several weeks, we'll have a man named Tom Robertson, who's an attorney, on an episode, and we're specifically going to look at issues such as the effects of unemployment. And when you fire somebody, should you fight it or not? 1099 versus W-2 employees. In other words, you're going to hire people as contractor, or you need to bring them in as employees. Very specific rules on those. The issue of exempt versus non-exempt employees, that doesn't come up much, but I have people say, I'm just going to pay him salary. That way, I don't keep track of his hours. Well, you can't just do that. In order to pay somebody a salary, they have to be an exempt employee, and you need to know what that is. We'll talk about workers' comp. We'll talk about non-competes and non-solicitation clauses that you can put in with your employees, and we'll talk about proper termination. That's certainly not all the sources of surprises for us, but it's a good checklist, and I encourage you all to listen. In the meantime, if you're not an expert in the area, hire one.
Thanks for listening to The Cash Flow Contractor. Check out our website in the show notes or visit thecashflowcontractor.com.